The Truman Show is a 1998 sci-fi film directed by Peter Weir that starred Jim Carrey in his first of many non-comedic roles. Its central character, Truman Burbank, despite being a charismatic and lovable guy, is an everyman with no remarkable qualities or character traits. Unfortunately for him, he has unknowingly spent his entire life living in a television studio, his every action being broadcast live to the whole world. All of his friends, neighbors, and every stranger he has ever met is an actor on The Truman Show, of which he is the star. Truman, after developing a desire to see more of the world, senses something is amiss when, at every turn, he is prevented from leaving his small town in a series of highly improbable events and begins to discover that his world is staged. After the revelation, he is faced with the movie's central question: what is real, and is truth worth risking everything for? Truman's awakening to the reality of his situation and his journey out of the studio parallels Plato's allegory of the cave. For those unfamiliar, the Greek philosopher Plato's allegory posits that life is like being chained up in a cave, forced to watch shadows move across the wall. The people chained are prisoners who have been in the cavern since birth, who have no knowledge of the world outside of the cave. They are chained in such a way that they cannot turn away from the cave wall, and behind them is a burning fire which people carrying objects occasionally pass in front of. Their shadows are cast upon the cave wall, to which the prisoners call out the objects by name. In this way, the prisoners, who are completely ignorant of any sort of outside world, believe that the shadows they see are the objects in their fullest form. They are completely unaware that all they are seeing is a shadowy imitation of something tangible. Truman, who was born on the set of The Truman Show, is living in Plato's cave. The 9-to-5 desk job he goes to work at each day might appear real to him, but in reality it's just an imitation of one. His relationship with the townsfolk might seem genuine, but they are actors imitating kindness. His brotherhood with his closest childhood friend may feel true, but he's an actor that's been lying to Truman's face his entire life. His marriage to his wife may resemble something like married life, but that too is a shallow imitation of what real love is. For his entire life, Truman has been inside the cave watching mere shadows, but never seeing the things casting them. The allegory continues when one day, one of the prisoner's shackles gives out under his weight and he is set free. He moves on, following a faint light at the end of the tunnel, and emerges from the mouth of the cave. At first, he is blinded by the intense light of the sun and cannot see anything, but his eyes soon adjust and he is able to witness the world in its fullness. After he has sufficiently experienced life outside, the man returns to the cave and tells the remaining prisoners of the wonders of the world. However, they refuse to listen, mock him for sounding foolish, and violently resist any attempts at being freed themselves. In their ignorance, they choose to remain living in their confinement and refuse to step away from the shadows with which they are comfortable. Truman's interaction with Sylvia is the moment his shackles break, and it happens completely spontaneously. Despite the showrunner's forced love interest in his life, he still chases after Sylvia, the only reason being that perhaps there's something about the way she acts that he detects as wholly different, or authentic in comparison to the determined behavior of everyone else. This would mean that perhaps, rather poetically, that love, as spontaneous and unpredictable as it is, cannot be successfully controlled or mimicked. In Truman's world, this spark of love has been the only thing that has ever been real. After Sylvia's warnings that things may not be as they appear, Truman begins to see the cracks in the world around him. He outsmarts the show's producers and sails off to find the outside world. He has, to this point, confronted and recognized that his closest friends, his wife, and everyone he has ever known was simply imitating human relationships. And when he reaches the edge of the sea, he is challenged by a voice that emits from the heavens above. If everything in The Truman Show is a shadow of something real, then the show's director is an imitation of God. Christoph, his name literally meaning off Christ, is portrayed as a perverse father figure that has determined the course of Truman's life from birth to adulthood. He smiles at events that he has orchestrated to happen to Truman, and fondly strokes Truman's sleeping image, which is only the shadow of the real Truman. Christoph is omnipresent and omnipotent. His network of cameras always lock Truman in frame wherever he is. At all times, he determines the movements of every person in Truman's life, and has full control over the rain and wind, and even the day and night cycle itself. Christof does not believe that Truman has the will to leave the show. He believes that, like the prisoners who choose to stay in the cave with their shadows, Truman will ultimately choose to stay on the show, as it's all he knows.
I think what distresses you, really, caller, is that ultimately Truman prefers his cell, as you call it.
The path ahead is presented as a door leading to a dark void, frightening and uncertain, unscripted and unsure. The possibilities for what lies beyond are endless. Back home, however, Truman knows the exact routine of every moment of every day. Of course, Truman ultimately chooses to leave the confines of the cave, and that's the last we see of him. We never see his long-awaited reunion with Sylvia, but it's fitting. Throughout the entire movie, we the audience have watched Truman from the perspective of the cameras placed around the studio. In a sense, we are the audience that is invading Truman's privacy. We are the audience the director is violating someone's life in order to satisfy. And when Truman chooses to leave the studio, he is choosing to no longer be an object for our amusement. So what Truman does when he leaves the show is really no longer any of our business. And with that, Truman has left the cave. If there's one way to label The Truman Show, it would be prophetic. The movie depicts a dystopian world where reality television has tried to become as real life. This premise has almost certainly taken place in our world. Over the last 2 decades, the rise of the internet has created a wholly new form of media that is unlike anything before it. People have slowly begun to turn away from staged television and cable networks and moved to online entertainment. Why? Well, for the same reason The Truman Show became a hit. Social media's enticing function is that it offers us a way to capture and present both the most ordinary and spectacular moments of our own real lives to a great number of people. In effect, social media has given us all a chance to be like Truman, the stars of our own shows. The problem here occurs when attempting to separate the edited, video-perfect version of yourself from who you really are. Many of the actors on The Truman Show were unable to make a distinction between their private lives and their work lives. Because they spent so much time pretending to be someone else, when Truman began to act out of his intended order, they experienced a crisis of identity. If everything you do is an act for an audience, is there any room left for there to be a real you? Is it even possible to be authentic? This issue is behind the not too uncommon narcissistic personalities of internet celebrities and social media influencers, and is something all of us who enjoy watching our posts gather likes will have to wrestle with to some degree. On the other hand, the internet has obviously done a lot of good, and these social media platforms have connected people and provided business opportunities to a great number of people that wouldn't exist without it. I suppose the solution is in moderation and perspective. It's fine to be an actor on a show, but less so if we believe the show to be our real lives.